Hurricane Irma strengthened into a dangerous Category 5 storm Tuesday as it roared toward the northeast Caribbean on a path that could take it to the United States. The U.S. National Hurricane Center said Irma had sustained winds of 185 miles per hour and was centered about 270 miles east of Antigua. It was moving west at 14 miles per hour. That makes Irma the second strongest hurricane ever recorded in the North Atlantic, behind 1980's Hurricane Allen. The center said there was a growing possibility that the storm's effects could be felt in Florida later this week and over the weekend, though it was still too early to be sure of its future track. Everyone in hurricane-prone areas should ensure that they have their hurricane plan in place. Irma's center was expected to move near or over the northern Leeward Islands late Tuesday and early Wednesday, the Hurricane Center said. The eye was then expected to pass about 50 miles from Puerto Rico late Wednesday. Authorities warned that the storm could dump up to 10 inches of rain, cause landslides and flash floods and generate waves of up to 23 feet. Government officials began evacuations and urged people to finalize all preparations as shelves emptied out across islands including Puerto Rico. The decisions that we make in the next couple of hours can make the difference between life and death, Puerto Rico Gov. Ricardo Rossello said. This is an extremely dangerous storm. Residents on the U.S. East Coast were urged to monitor the storm's progress in case it should turn northward toward Florida, Georgia or the Carolinas. This hurricane has the potential to be a major event for the East Coast. It also has the potential to significantly strain FEMA and other governmental resources occurring so quickly on the heels of Hurricane Harvey. Evan Myers, Chief Operating Officer of ACCU Weather, said in a statement on Tuesday, visitors to the Florida Keys were given orders to evacuate and all schools there were closed until further notice. Florida Governor Rick Scott declared the state of emergency for 67 Albanian Lex counties in the state on Monday after some forecasts showed the powerful storm could be headed for the East Coast. Hurricane Irma is a major and life-threatening storm and Florida must be prepared. I have continued to be briefed by the Florida Division of Emergency Management on Hurricane Irma and current forecast models have Florida in Irma's path, potentially impacting millions of Floridians, Scott said. Today, given these forecasts and the intensity of this storm, I have declared a state of emergency for every county in Florida to make certain that state, federal and local governments are able to work together and make sure resources are dispersed to local communities as we get prepared for this storm. Floridians took advantage of the Labor Day holiday to empty many store shelves of drinking water and other supplies in advance of Irma. By midday Monday, many grocery stores across South Florida had been emptied of bottled water and stores were hoping to restock beginning Tuesday morning. States of emergency were also declared in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands where residents rushed to find last-minute supplies, forming long lines outside supermarkets and gas stations. People in Puerto Rico braced for electricity outages after the director of the island's power company predicted that storm damage could leave some areas without electricity for 4 to 6 months. But some areas will have power back in less than a week, Ricardo Ramos told radio station Natuno 630 AM. The utilities infrastructure has deteriorated greatly during a decade-long recession, and Puerto Ricans experienced an island-wide outage last year. Both Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands expected 4 inches to 8 inches of rain and winds of 40 to 50 miles per hour with gusts of up to 60 miles per hour. The governors at both Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands have submitted state of emergency declarations to the White House ahead of the storm. Puerto Rico Gov. Ricardo Rossello says he has spoken to White House Chief of Staff John Kelly and thanked him in a tweet for the attention given to Puerto Rico ahead of the storm. Puerto Rico has announced a number of steps in preparation for the storm, including a 24-hour ban on the sale of alcohol starting 6 a.m. Wednesday. The government has also dispatched inspectors to stores throughout the territory to check for possible price gouging. U.S. Virgin Islands Gov. Kenneth Mapp says in a news briefing on Tuesday that he doesn't want to frighten anyone, but that forecasters predict the storm could skirt the territory or even pass directly over it. MAP says people in the islands may start to feel the storm's effects around mid-morning Wednesday. This is not an opportunity to go outside and try to have fun with a hurricane, MAP warned. It's not time to get on a surfboard. Irma grew into a Category 4 storm on Monday, ending by early Tuesday. Its maximum sustained winds increased to near 150 miles per hour. In comparison, Hurricane Harvey had winds of 130 miles per hour when it made landfall in Texas last week. It was centered about 320 miles east of the Leeward Islands and moving west at 14 miles per hour. It is forecast to begin buffeting the region on Tuesday, and the U.S. National Hurricane Center said additional strengthening was expected. Authorities warned that the storm could dump up to 10 inches of rain, cause landslides and dangerous flash floods, and generate waves of up to 23 feet. In the Caribbean, hurricane warnings were issued for 12 island groups, including Antigua, where the governor urged people to evacuate the tiny island of Anegada if they could ahead of the storm. Vivian Wheatley, proprietor of the Anegada Reef Hotel, planned to stay behind. She said she would stay in one of the hotel rooms and take advantage of the generator since there were no guests. "We know it's a very powerful storm, and we know it's going to be very close," she said. "Let's hope for the best." A hurricane warning was posted for Antigua and Barbuda, Anguilla, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Martin, Saba, St. Eustatius, St. Martin and St. Barts, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. A tropical storm warning was in effect for Guadeloupe and Dominica. The storm center was expected to move near or over the northern Leeward Islands late Tuesday and early Wednesday, the Hurricane Center said. Irma is a serious threat for the Caribbean islands and United States, ACC weather-led long-range meteorologist Paul Pastelock said on Monday. It is still unclear what path Irma would take as it inches closer to the U.S. Right now, meteorologists say landfall in Georgia, Florida or the Carolinas are all possible. The storm could also move out into the Atlantic and completely bypass the East Coast, though that is now the least likely option. This hurricane has the potential to be a major event for the East Coast. It also has the potential to significantly strain FEMA and other governmental resources occurring so quickly on the heels of Harvey, Evan Myers, expert senior meteorologist and chief operating officer, said. If it does hit the U.S., it won't be until this weekend, but residents in the southern U.S. shouldn't waste time getting an emergency plan together. As we saw just 10 days ago with Harvey, it is important to be ready to evacuate and be prepared with, at a minimum, a list of items you would take if you had 30-minute notice or 1 hour's notice or 6 hours or a day to evacuate, Myers said. Meanwhile, government workers on the islands of the Eastern Caribbean are clearing drains and pruning trees ahead of Irma. American Airlines has added extra flights out of 2 Caribbean islands to get people out of the path of the storm. The flights were added in St. Martin and St. Kitts and Nevis. Those are in addition to regularly scheduled flights Tuesday and Wednesday to Miami. American says it expects to make additional flight changes as it monitors the storm.